today I'm going to demo how to make some simple turn boxes. This one is one I think made out of Cocobolo or something like that. I don't even remember which wood it was. As you can see, I like a tight-fitting lid, so this is the style I tend to make. It's got a hollow center and a real tight-fitting lid. This is one that I made up just the other night. And someone wants to grab these and pass them around so you got an idea of what I'm going to be making and looking at. How's the volume of everything? Okay? Okay. Well, basically the first thing that I tend to do when I start out is turn it to cylinder. I already cut the box down so we don't have to listen to the saw going off. I got this nifty little center finder. I don't even remember where I picked it up, probably Rockler or Woodcraft or something like that, but makes it quick and simple to find the center of a square blank for doing box turning and pepper mills and that type of thing. So I tend to typically just make an X on either side. I use a combination of steb centers for driving it to do the initial layout of the box. The steb center is a little bit different than a normal spur drive that comes with most of the lathes. It's got a spring point here that actually goes into the works, so it lets you find the center a little bit better, and it doesn't tend to dig as deep or tear up the wood if you jam the tool into it and spin it. It's got a lot of little teeth on it, so it makes it real nice for doing boxes. And I also make a style of box called a finial box. It's got a real long, thin finial on the top, and the spur centers are good for just generally roughing out projects of this type. So, get it centered on here. And I just tend to crank it in so it spins nice and true. Lock it down. And I got two options really for roughing it out. I just tend to use my bowl gouge for a lot of those things. Okay, now I need to figure out how this turns on here. There we go. Sorry, I got a Delta at home, a little different control, so. I just find that as a kind of a quick way to see if I'm round or not. If it bounces, then I'm not quite round anymore, so. Should be good enough. Yep, typical lathe that you can't slow down automatically. A big one at home was like that too. It's a 220 volt lathe, and it slows down as it wants to, not when you want it to. So the next step that I'm going to do on here is I basically make some tenons on either side of the blank. And that's what I'm going to use to grip it with the chuck. And I use a square tool here. I picked it up. It's a Sorby tool. It's got a nice point on it. When I grind it, I usually grind the top first, then the bottom. I tell it by the writing on the side here. And it's either me or it's warm in this room, one or the other, because I am fogging up my glasses. Probably shouldn't have worn a black shirt. Live and learn, right? This here, I'm just facing it down so I have a fairly smooth edge. Unfortunately, I don't cut that quite that straight. And when I do a box, I like to go to the, there's a rule that I tend to follow. It's a 1/3. Whoop, I lost the mic. Sorry about that. I guess they don't like me very much. Is that better? Can everyone hear me all right? All right. I can't hear myself through this thing, so. Anyway, I was saying I like to follow a 2/3, 1/3 rule. I like the bottom of my box to be about 2/3 of my material and the top of my box to be the other third. You can do it by sight or whatever, but I'll just take a portion of the tool and try and get a rough estimate and mark it. And I don't actually part it completely in half, just for danger's sake. I get it down to about 1/4 of an inch, and then I've got a cheap little saw that I got at Menards or Home Depot or something that makes short work of just cutting it in half. And just a couple pulls on this will get it right in half. So now you got your 2 halves of the box. Yeah, okay, it will go slow enough. All right. There's no RPM on here, but I'm just going by sight. Usually what I do for a speed is about 300-400 RPM. I try not to go much faster than that. As you can see, it makes good short work of getting the initial hollowing out. Now what I usually do is go like this when I get down so far, and then just kind of take a mark on this. Figure out roughly how deep I am, which means I need to go a little further. The other thing you can do too is if you want to take this completely out, you can see how deep you actually want to go. Now remember, there's this point on the Forstner bit. You don't want to leave that in the bottom of your box. So you want to measure to the tip of the point, not to the tip of the actual cutting edge. I only got about 1/4 inch more to go, so. There's a lot of different ways to hollow out a box. I got quite a few different tools myself for hollowing. Some people even use a spindle gouge like this. You can go like this. It's not necessarily the best way to do it, but you can take some meat away using that. I also have a tool here that my club made. Someone just drilled a piece of steel of some sort and put a M2 square chunk of cutting steel into it, and then shaped it to a rounded over curve. I use this tool a lot. That makes real short work as well. There's also the Hunter turning tools, which I'm sure some of you have probably heard about. Sure hope I brought it with me. Here we go. This is probably my favorite one. It's his smallest size that he makes. But it can take the material away nice and fast as well. I use this one primarily for finishing, so I don't have to do a lot of sanding. My favorite tool, however, and I use this for ornaments, I use it for boxes, I've even used it for small bowls that were giving me grief. This is a tool from Don Derry. It's called his ornament hollowing tool. This thing works so nice because you got this great comfortable handle, and it's got a pull arrestor. I don't know what he even calls it, but you set it like this, and you go to town. And you can make short work of hollowing anything out. It is so fast and so nice, and you don't have to worry about your wrist getting yanked or anything like that. And you can hollow things out extremely quick with it. And of course, speed would help. I tend to do boxes at really high speed, pretty much almost as fast as the lathe can go. Anywhere from 2,500 to 3,000 RPM or faster. Now I'm purposely leaving the walls of the box fairly thick to begin with because I'm actually going to do some shaping on the outside and get that kind of inward shape. But I've got the inside pretty much hollowed out where I want it now. I got a couple of bad ridges in there, so I need to clean those up.
Did you say that this special tool had a carbide tip or not?
Nope, it's just a standard tool steel that you can buy little chunks of. I mean, I know some people that have actually made their own, but his is so reasonable. I think he charges like 80 or 90 bucks for them, something like that. And like I say, I use this thing constantly. The only disadvantage about it is it doesn't fit in my tool case. Oh, darn. And it's still got a few ridges in there. And then, like I was saying before, I typically tend to finish it up with my hunter tool. Does this thing reverse? Yes, it does. I don't know about any of you, but one of the things that always kind of got me every once in a while was sitting there and having to lean way over like this to see what I'm doing. Well, you got reverse on the lathe. Let's go from that side. Simple trick, but lets you clean up the piece real easy without having to bend way over and stretch yourself. And now I got a fairly smooth inside. Hit that with a little bit of sandpaper. When I do the inside of something like this, I like to just fold up the sandpaper and make it fairly small, and so that I don't have to get my fingers too far in there. The last thing you want to do is get your finger caught in any way, shape, or form. It hurts and it's not pretty. Well, a stain at any rate. Close enough for horseshoes and hand grenades, I guess. Oops. All right. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to face up and clean up this top edge. Because the whole point of this box is when I finally get the lid and the base to fit together, I want the grain to actually line up. If you look at any of the boxes, you'll see that all the grains line up real nice. So that's what I'm going to do next here. I think I'll be showing some sharpening here in a moment too. All right. And then if you want to just round that inside lip off a little bit, you can sit there with the hunter tool again. And you get a nice smooth edge, which probably needs a little sanding again. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to take this this tool that I used before to make the tenons on it, and I'm actually going to go in and I'm going to make the lip that the lid will connect to. So I want to get a little bit closer to center. It gets hot too. All right. Gets me a pretty decent edge there. I'm just going to go a little bit deeper. And the next tool that I use is it's just a square scraper, but instead of just sharpening this leading edge here, I actually sharpen the side as well. And by doing that, it lets me cut this way into my piece or straight on into it as well. So in order to square up this edge real nice, I'm actually going to go in. And I don't know if you can quite see on the camera here. If you can, but what I do is I go out about 5 or 10 degrees when I'm doing this inside lip here. I actually hold it away. I'm going to exaggerate it here. So you're kind of going in like this when you shape that. The reason being is because when you fit the lid to it, you can shave off tiny little pieces of the lid and it'll slowly start fitting on better and better as you go in. Does that make sense to everyone? Actually, you know what? I keep forgetting I got something to draw on here. So, if this is my turn piece right here, and this is the lip for the cover to fit on. This is my tool rest right here. When I hold the tool, I'm going to hold it at a bit of an angle like this. So this is straight, and you got about a 5-degree angle right here.
So you're sort of undercutting it.
Well, you're cutting it at a bit of an angle. So when you do the lid part of it, okay, here's your lid. and you're going to have the lid part cut like this. Again, I'm going to exaggerate it. So this part is actually like this, and this part is at an angle like this. So when you start fitting those two together, you'll get a tight fit, but there'll still be this much space between the lid and the piece. So you slowly start whittling away, and eventually you'll get it right down to the point where it's a nice tight fit. So that's just a trick that I've used that works really, really well. So I'm going to do that right here. And it doesn't take much. So for now, the base of my box is pretty much done. This is the other tool that I tend to use a lot when I'm doing the boxes. Cheap, simple, $5 at Harbor Freight or something like that. But I'll check the outside diameter of the lip that I've created, and then I will increase it by about 1/16 of an inch on either side. So I'll make it a lot larger than this lip is. Reason being, it lets me rough this down a lot faster without risking getting so close that I can't that I undercut it and then it doesn't fit at all. First I better clean this up. The cord's getting in the way. Doesn't have to be great, I just don't want it to be real. Now if you see when I'm doing this, I'm trying to see what I'm doing on here. See the line I'm scribing in? Well, that line doesn't match up with this side yet. So all I do is move the line a little bit further out. And actually I did that backwards. I should have started out and gone in. Time to erase. Sorry about that. Hey, just think, it hasn't even gotten to the design change point yet. So I start outside and work in. So I think I had it right the first time. Oh well. You need to take this time to decide just what you want to do with the inside of your lid. If you want a nice design in, or if you just want a kind of nice oval shape or whatever. Or a nice dome top to it, I should say. And, of course, my hunter tool to smooth it out. As you can see, this one is more than capable of taking a nice healthy bite, too. Now we just got to make sure I didn't go overboard. Oops. All right. Wade went overboard. Sorry about that. There, see? No longer fits. Hey, always have a backup plan, right? Even if it does involve a little erasing. What's that?
Or a wood stove.
Nah. You should see one time I messed one up by just not paying attention and talking too much. I don't do that, you know. And I had to go home and fix it instead of just tossing it and redoing it. So at this point, now I'm going to do that matching lip for the top. And I'm not going to have to do a whole heck of a lot, so. Except I do have to go up a little higher. And this is always the touchy part because you got to do a little tiny cut and then test fit it. Jeez, I did it again. Yeah, I definitely went a little wider than I should have. I will say the lines are still going to match up, though. At least they better, or I'm going to be embarrassed. There. So that's how it should have gone the first 2 times I attempted it. There we go. I didn't even get it completely turned around. There's still some flat spots. So, but now we've got the space in here that we can slowly whittle it down and make it fit that much better. Although I am going to have to carve out a little bit more of this top, seeing as I took up a little space that I had not intended to. Have any of you ever seen any of Cindy Drozda's work or anything like that? I actually had the opportunity to take a class with her. That's kind of what got me into boxes in general, and also the finial boxes that I like to make. She actually puts a little tiny gemstone in the top of most of her finial boxes, like a real gemstone. It's kind of neat. I just leave a little nub at the top because I think it looks cool. And I don't have the money for gems. Now I made it just a little bit deeper than the height of the lip that I have on here, just for a little bit of extra room, just in case I need it again. And when I go in and do this part of it, again, I've got it, the handle pulled towards me to get the opposing angle. And that's about as much as I take off at any one time. A little tiny amount like that, because if you take off more than that before you test fit it, you'll wind up with a loose one like I had to redo a couple of times. So, and you can see it fits on there pretty tight right now. So I need to take off just a couple a little bit more thicknesses of shavings, and I should have a nice tight flush fit. This is the part that always is kind of fiddly and takes time. If you ever want to actually do something like this to a scraper so that you get a tool for this use, you have to, I don't know, does anyone want to see how I actually sharpen this? Okay. Can you? Maybe. Maybe. How about I do this instead? Get this out of the way here. Can you zoom in from there?
Yeah.
Okay. This one's a little tough to do it on because I don't have a real large tool rest on here, but I'll try and do it by hand. I tend to stick it out on one side and just kind of hold it like this. What's that?
I can't see because your hand.
How's that? Ha-ha! A little warm. That's warm. Just a couple drops is enough to cool it off, and I haven't had any bad things happen from doing that, so I do it. The reason I had to sharpen that was because I wasn't getting a lot of little shavings off of it, and if I gave it too much pull, I'd just taken a huge chunk off. So you're better off sharpening it if it gives you any pause whatsoever. Again, there's the little amount of shaving. Sometimes you get it in one or two tries, sometimes you get it in more. I think this is one of those more times. Come on, get in there. Just about got it. There's a little bit of a space there yet. I don't know if you can kind of, there we go. Uh-oh.
You have to have absolutely dry wood.
Yes.
If it's wet at all, it's not going to work.
If it is wet wood, it will, as soon as it dries out, it's going to swell and it's going to lock itself on or lock the cap off, one or the other. So you either have a box you can't open or a box you can't close. I'm going to turn it up real high for the last cut so I get lots of real fine hairs on it. hopefully that'll be enough for it to fit nice and tight. Where'd my sandpaper go? I got some shavings on this edge here that are keeping it from closing tight, so I'm just gonna take a little bit off there and see if it fits nice and snug now. Still on there a little bit tight, so I gotta take it down just a little more. I don't know why I keep trying to stop the thing. There. I think my spacing problem isn't so much that I have that I don't have the fit good. I think that it's this face is not. The face of this lid is not quite squared up, at least to the box top. That's another thing that you can use this scraper for, with the side cut on it. Oh. And I guess pulling the lid out just loosen the top in the chuck. There we go. There. Nice tight fitting top. And at that point, I probably should make that just a little bit looser. So now I'm going to take another measurement on this lid. What I want to do is I want to figure out what I want my minimum diameter to be, because where's one of those sample pieces? Hey, have that back real quick.
You mean minimum diameter for sort of decoration or minimum OD, the biggest part?
Well, for example, on this piece, I'm going to show it on the finished one. I took this measurement right here, and then I increased it to what I wanted my maximum diameter to be, which is this right here. That way I won't go down so far that I cut the box in half, which I have done when I was first learning how to do these. Once I have the diameter set, so I use this one here as my base, as what diameter what the diameter of the vessel itself is, and then I increase it about. I try and set about an 1/8 of an inch on the radius. So if this right here is 2 inches, you set this for 2 1/4 inches. Does that make sense? So right there's my setting. Lock it in. I got to clear tools off of here because I need the tailstock again. Make sure this is seated good. And if you didn't see this before, this particular stub center actually is on a bearing as well. Similar to a live center, except you can't change the tips. But for this part of it, I'm going to use just a one-way live center. But again, when I took the class with Cindy Drozda, she had her own custom center made to fit the one-way center. And it sticks out a lot further, and it's got a very, very tiny little point, which you can kind of see as a little dot on the screen. The nice thing about it is it's out away from the beef of the live center here, so you have all this room in which to work instead of this room that's encumbered by the body of the live center and the threads. And then at that point is where you pretty much design the outside of your box. And I like using my my bowl tool for a lot of the outside shaping stuff, just because I got a good long handle and I got a grind on it that I like. It's not exactly a standard grind. I don't use any of the jigs for grinding or anything. I do this all freehand. It's just I set the angle that I want, and as I apply it to the sharpening wheel, I swing it around like this and turn the handle at the same time so that the grinding wheel is always on the cutting edge. I would show you, but I need a little bit larger platform than that grinders has to do it. So, excuse me a moment. I'm not going to use this bottom tenon at all, so I'm actually going to take that off. I'm just going to keep it down there, and then as the last step before I finish the lid, I'll actually do the bottom on it. I'm going to turn down this outside, and I'm just going to gradually do an inward shape on it. Once I do a little bit, I'll just sit there and go like this to make sure I haven't hit my minimum for my minimum diameter. And I'm getting there. What's that? It doesn't really matter where it is. I usually tend to set it in the middle of the box, just because I try and get as much of a shape as I can where this and this are the same diameter. As you can see, I failed on this one. But if you see the little box that's going around somewhere, that one's, the top and the bottom are almost the same size. I don't like measure it to make it exactly the same size, because if you get it too perfect, it just sometimes doesn't look right. Sometimes that little size offset kind of makes the piece in a way. Let's see what we're doing for time here. Yeah, we're doing good, actually. And I just hit my minimum diameter. So now, time to sand it up and finish it. At least the outside edge. I don't need that in the way anymore. When I'm doing my sanding, I don't even know what speed I've got. I'm assuming it's probably around 800, maybe a little faster. But I tend to go one direction, then I reverse it, and I do the other direction. Another trick that someone taught me for sanding down dry wood that works amazing. Have any of you ever done like a maple bowl out of really dry wood, and when you're sanding the inside you get those streak marks that are just a bear to get out? Spray alcohol, like rubbing alcohol on it, light it on fire for a split second on the lathe. It'll make those little ends that are fuzzing stand up, and you can sand them right off and they disappear. It works so good.
Gotta like fire.
Huh?
Gotta like fire.
Gotta love it, yeah. Obviously, let's not dump an entire gallon on, spray bottle spits. The nice thing about alcohol is it disappears very quickly. You can also just let it air dry, but there's something about the flame on it that makes those particles stand up. So I'm going to hit it with some 220 as well. Of course, power sanding also works really good for stubborn bowls. So, anyone power sand? There. So. I'm just going to whittle down this, try and finish up as much of the underside as I can before I lose the little nub on the bottom. You want to maybe try and get a shoulder view of what I'm doing so you can see the on here. There we go. Yep. And everyone see that pretty good now? All right. So what I did is I just coned it down to a real little point. And then at this point, I like to kind of go in on the bottom a little bit, a bit of a scoop. And that's the reason that I like a really tight fitting box, because I can finish up the bottom now and it's it's tight on there. As long as I do really light, delicate cuts, I can finish up this bottom without any issues. A good safety precaution, though, if you can't get a real tight fitting lid, is to sit there and wrap the seam with some masking tape, some of that blue masking tape. That works real good as well. We're just going to hit the bottom with a little sandpaper. Speed. I think I said something before about sanding at a slower speed. Main reason is so you don't fry your finger. Look at that. I got a flat spot here yet. I gotta fix that because that'll drive me crazy. One of the best ways to apply the center to something is to do it while it's running. Let's see, what should I do here? Yeah, just make a little angle there. A little flat spot's stubborn. It won't go away. No more flat spot. So essentially we just changed the shape of the box a little bit, but yeah, what the heck, right? Only thing I got to do here now is get rid of that little nibbin in the bottom. There. And the last thing I tend to do when I make a box probably comes from all the Rose engine stuff I do all the time. If I can find it. Guess I left one of my tools at home. Oh well. I'll use that. Make just a couple of little decorative lines in the bottom. Just something to give it a little something different. And in essence of time, one of the finishes I like to use is Myland. How many of you used Mylands before? How do you like the polish? One of the things that a lot of people comment about with Mylands is that it looks good at first, but then the shine wears off. There's a little bit of a trick to applying it. If you apply the Mylands polish and then you put enough friction on it to let it smoke, just a real light smoke. It shouldn't burn the wood, but just a little bit of smoke on it. It'll actually liquefy the finish, and then it'll dry with the heat to an almost glass finish that lasts. And you've got to get it hot in order to do that. I'm just doing a real quick finish on this. I'm not going to go when I do the Mylands finish, it usually takes me a good 10 minutes because I soak it and saturate it and soak it some more, and then I do the heat thing that I was just talking about on it. But I do like the way Mylands makes the maple stand out. And then a nice look on it. Now, before I take the whole thing off, I'll take this off, and I'm just going to rub some Mylands on the inside. I could have finished it earlier, but I forgot. But I don't tend to always do the high-speed spin. I don't like my fingers in this size of an opening while it's going fast anyway. So this is one I just tend to do like this. And if you rub the Mylands on like that, you can actually do a little bit of this edge too if the rag isn't too wet. And that way you can get a little bit of finish color on that dried edge. Considering how tight I got that lid, I may regret it. It's all your fault over there. Yeah, well. A little bit of color is not bad. Man, I think I cooked my finger on the lathe before. I don't normally do that when I'm sanding, but I was too busy talking and trying to sand at the same time, and my zip. I think I'm jet lathe challenged or something. I keep wanting to flip a switch to turn it on. And I'm just hitting it with the sandpaper so that I can hopefully still make it fit on, seeing as I put a little polish on there, or finish on there. So now we got that part of the box all done. Now I just got to finish the top. Still comes off. And you just basically just reverse it on the lathe and tighten the jaws outward. Don't tighten them too much or you'll snap the edge that you just worked so hard to get perfect. As long as you can give it a good yank and it doesn't pull off, it should be held on there more than enough to let you finish it up. Now, considering I did the whole round over thing on this edge here, I'm actually going to try and make this edge match in as much as I can. The other thing I need to check is how deep I actually went. Oh, yeah, I'm fine. Because I've still got that, I got that same little flat spot on this one here, so I'm going to need to do the same kind of thing to smooth it over. Now I could sit there and do a box type top like I did here, where it's just the rounded over top. Or because I've got this nice flat spot already, I could clean up this flat spot and give this whole top a little bit more of a unique look and appeal, which I think is what I'll do this time. Just for something a little different. What do you think of that for a top? Make sure I don't have any rough edges on it. Yeah, a couple I got to clean up. Rough edges, there's just a little bit of grain tearing right in here. Should be able to clean that up with a real light pass. Stop it. And I use the similar type of grind on my spindle gouge as I do on my bowl gouge. Can you kind of see that tip on there? There, that's a pretty good view right there. When I sharpen this, I set the tool rest at a certain angle, and it sharpens basically this tip all the way around, right here. And then I take the grinder and I hold it up like this, so that the grinding wheel's hitting like this. And I grind the rest of this down so I have several different bevels to choose from. You all know what the importance of the bevel is? Some of you? Everyone? Well, just basically, if you hit the bevel first, then you tilt your cutting edge into the work, you won't have any rips or tears. You won't have any catches, you won't have any damaged pieces. If you just put the sharp edge directly in first, you're going to wind up with catches and tears occasionally. So if you gradually move the cutting edge in like that, it saves a lot of catches and damage to your work. And by having multiple different bevels to choose from, it lets you have different angles on the tool when you're making your cuts. Does that make sense? Okay. Keep losing my sandpaper here. Now, if you wanted to, of course, you can do pretty much anything you want on the top, a couple decorations or whatever, but I'm just going to keep this fairly simple. Well, that doesn't please me very much. I got lines in there even though I tried not to. It's just probably because of the grain or something, so I'm going to try and take those out with the hunter tool a little bit and refinish it. I'm actually going to use the hunter tool to do the finishing on it. You see all those circles on there? That's from the way the grain sanded down. Helps to go the right way. And that's smooth enough with the hunter tool that I don't even need to sand that down.
You ever put chatter work?
I haven't really gotten into much chatter work. What I do tend to do is I've got the Rose engine display set up in there. I build Rose engines too. So I would tend to put Rose work on it. I really haven't gotten into chatter work myself. Yeah, it looks a little better.